In archaeology, it's the investigation of the human past by evaluating and analyzing material remains. Archeology. Now, the book makes a distinction, and I know this is on the midterm, so you might want to make a note here. One of the essay questions I ask, what is the difference between prehistoric and historic archaeology? Well, prehistoric, and I also want you to know the difference between hard data and soft data. So, prehistoric and historic. Let's cover that one first. Prehistoric means studying human remains of people or cultures before a written language. So if that culture or society did not have written language, you would be doing prehistoric archaeology. Technically speaking, at least according to anthropology, you could have prehistoric people living today, because prehistoric simply means before a written language. So if there's like some indigenous tribe in the jungle somewhere that has not developed a written form of communication, they would be considered prehistoric even though they are living in the 21st century. Okay, does that make sense? Okay. Historic means there is some sort of written record to go with it, even if that's cuneiform or hieroglyphs, something of that nature. There's still a written account of the people and how they viewed themselves. And so that would be historic archaeology. Now, hard data is anything that is physical, material, tangible, something you can touch, see, smell, weigh, measure. So things like bones, cooking pots, spearheads, horse collars, any physical material thing, that is hard data. So think of hard as physical. Soft data are the intangibles that are associated with archaeology. So for example, you might find a grave site full, you have the bodies, the bones, you might have some of the deceased's favorite items, you might find a plate and coffee mug and utensils, or maybe their favorite pet. You might see food or some form of wealth stored or buried with the dead. So the hard data is all those physical things you can kind of list and number off. The soft data is kind of more inference. By seeing such a well-arranged grave, and you can see items put in there for the dead's use, we can infer or imply that, one, there's a great deal of respect for human beings. Two, there's probably some sort of belief in an afterlife if they're sending the person off with things they would need, like tools or food or cookware. And so those are inferences. So for example, in the Bible, it's a historic document, it's written, and we can read the Psalms, but we know that the Psalms were actually songs. But we have to infer what the tune would be, because that's not included in the hard data, right? So that would be an example. It also infers, even though we can't dig up God, by reading the Hebrew scriptures, we can infer their belief in the supernatural, a high creator God that made man in his image. Those sorts of things would be soft data. So those are more like ideas, concepts, values, non-physical tangibles of a culture, where hard data is the physical, concrete aspects of a culture. Okay, pretty easy, right? Prehistoric, before written language. Hard data, physical material. Historic means written language. Soft data is things we infer ideologically about them. Any questions about that first part, physical anthropology? All right.